أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I begin by seeking protection with Allah from Shaitan, who is our sworn enemy. I begin with the name of Allah, whose mercy is infinite, His mercy is continuous. I want to thank all of you for coming, and I want to apologize for jumping in, but you see the company that I'm with, and so I have to respect my elders, and I stand here on the shoulders of Imam Siraj, Imam Khalid Riggs, and others, and there are way more informed people than I to speak on this topic. I'm really here as the current president of the Muslim Alliance in North America, and I'll get into that towards the end of the topic, and I'll show you a few pictures of people in our community who are well-versed in this subject, and I encourage you to check the websites and read some of the books and other things that they have written. So let's go to our first slide. All right, let's do a quick exercise. I want you guys to, if you're comfortable, close your eyes and remember some of these stories. All right? So we have Prophet Isa, Jesus. You remember the stories about him and the miracles that he did. He would grab some mud and shape it into the form of a bird and blow into it and became a real bird. Remember that story? And they have his mother Maryam. And then Maryam, she was blessed to get food when it was just out of season. Nobody knew how she got it. She was eating and she said, "This is from Allah." And when she got pregnant, she was by the tree and she was commanded to shake the tree. You know these stories. And then we have John, Yahya, one of the, I think, as they say in sports, one of the underrated prophets in the Quran. Such a pious person, and he was working with Jesus in his ministry. Then you have Musa, powerful figure. Musa, when he came down from the mountain and he had his commandments, and he was upset with his brother that he allowed him for them to go back to worshiping a cow. You remember that story. Then you have Yusuf, Prophet Joseph. His brothers put him into the well. They left him for dead. And he went through an amazing journey and came out and was over all the finances of the land. And then Jacob, Yusuf's father, who had 12 sons, 12 tribes, Bani Israel. And he had went blind from his misery of losing his son. And then his father Ishaq, right? And then his father Ibrahim. You remember these stories. Ibrahim, the one who was counseling his father when he was a young boy about which person had killed the stones. And then Prophet Noah, over 900 years giving dawah to his people, quietly, publicly. And then Adam. Now, if your eyes are still closed, I want you to open up your eyes and look up there and tell me, how many black faces did you imagine? How many of those people in your mind were black? If you're like me, none of them were black. And that affected me, that when I open up a children's book about Adam and Eve, of course, a lot of Muslims won't put the actual picture, but the silhouettes and the bodies are really creamy. Not dark black. So let's go to the next slide. This is back one more. So this is a Quranic verse, and I have about six, seven translations. 4 of them translated as black mud. Dark black mud. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam from. And so there's many scholars that say that they believe Adam was dark black. I'm just pausing there for a second because for some people it's disturbing. And there was one scholar that I was listening to that said something that really shook me as far as where does this racism come from? Where does this issue that is everywhere? This issue of blackness is everywhere. Even amongst black people, there's an issue with blackness. For sure amongst Arab people and Pakistani people and white people and any people in the world, there's an issue with people who are black and dark. And where does it come from? Allahu A'lam. But one of the ideas is, imagine how furious Iblis was when he was commanded to bow down to this creature. And he's still upset. He's still trying to prove that we are ungrateful creatures. He's still after humanity to try to get us into the hellfire. And is it possible that he just has an issue with blackness? Because he was commanded to bow down to a black man. Allah knows best, but I wanted to show you that these aren't my translations. These are famous translators of the Quran who don't translate it as mud. 3 of them just said mud, but 4 of them said black mud. Next slide. So this statement here says, oh, Brother Joshua, you remind me of Bilal. Okay, all right. So click a button, see if it comes up. Just click a button, yeah. What does that mean? What do you mean I remind you of Bilal? Because I sing? He had a nice, beautiful voice? Okay. If that's what reminds you of Bilal, okay. Oh, because he was so in love with Rasulullah. That's what reminds you of Bilal, my love of Rasulullah. Because he was such a strong companion. He didn't waver. Is that what reminds you? Or is it just because I'm black? And is that the only image that you can think of in our history? Is that one? How come, click it a couple more times. One more time. How come I don't remind you of Adam? How come Imam Siraj doesn't remind you of Adam? This brother reminds me of Adam. Nice, smooth, black skin, mashallah. Because those images aren't in our mind. It is not what comes to our mind when we think of Adam. And don't let me get into Jesus. Even Christians don't even know what Jesus looked like, but it's kind of, you'll see somebody down the street and be like, oh, he look like Jesus. Why? He's white, his eyes are blue, and he has long hair. Next slide. So you won't find it if you're not looking for it. So I was listening the other day to this very intelligent man, Brother Neil, some type of nuclear physicist or astrophysicist, and he said the most important, significant event in human history, he said in human history, was Christopher Columbus coming to America. Why? He said because it was the first time, and this is my brother Neil. I listened to a lot of this stuff. He's a very bright man. But he said it was the first time after the ice age, when the water receded and the land bridge was shown and people started traveling from one continent to the next, and then the water came back up and people were stranded. He said that was the first time that the people were connected again, was with Christopher Columbus. And I said, that don't sound right. I mean, I've read some other studies that say something else. So let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about a timeline. And can't really see it from here. But anyway, so before 1311, Allah knows best. But one of my favorite scholars, Abdullah Hakim Quick, talks about Mansa Musa and his brother before him, who was king, who turned over the leadership to Mansa Musa and then sailed with hundreds of ships across the Atlantic in 1311. And then there's other scholars that say when Christopher Columbus came here, by the way, with 2 sailors who were Muslim because they had already sailed the seas, and they already knew where all this stuff was, they had found Muslims here, and they found black people here, and they found stuff here that was from Africa. But here is one of the most intelligent people in the world, Brother Neil, saying that it was the first time in human history. So there's a lot of stuff related to blackness and black people that is just kind of ignored, written off. I personally walked into a high school in Northern Virginia to give a talk, and I asked the gentleman, I said, it was a history class at a prestigious high school. And I was looking around at all his posters on the wall, and I said, what do you guys teach about the African presence here before Columbus? That's what I asked him. He said, well, Not much, because they didn't really have a written language. I said, that's what he's teaching at a prestigious high school? That black people didn't have a written language? This is not too long ago. It's like 10 years ago. SubhanAllah, Timbuktu, one of the most amazing places. When I grew up, it was, the only thing we knew about Timbuktu is that's where you got knocked out to. It's like, knocked out to Timbuktu. But we didn't know about its libraries and its rich educational history. We didn't know it, we weren't taught it. Next slide. So in that previous slide, I mentioned some other things about the development of Islam in America, from the people who were coming here in the 1800s, a lot of Arabs, a lot of people from South Asia. In 1965, when the gates really opened up to a lot of the Muslim community, the first white man that they had documented who became Muslim in the late 1800s, Brother Webb, Alexander Webb, to the Nation of Islam. Before that, Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple, and then after that, the Darul Islam movement, and then the biggest movement to mainstream Islam in the history of the world happened in this country under the leadership of Deen Muhammad. And nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, there's a few people that have studied it. One brother I know has a PhD in it. But most of this Muslim community doesn't even know that. That is amazing that you right here in this country have some history for Muslim in the world. We have something unique. Besides being black, we have the most people that came to Islam and overnight. So in this picture you have Brother Amir. He has a museum here in Washington, D.C. about African American Muslim history. He is very well informed. That is a person you should go to learn about the history of African Americans in Islam, in America, African Americans in America. And you can look I got his website up there, so you can check out his website. Please check out his website and learn some of the amazing things that you probably did not know about Muslims and black Muslims in America. So when you get questions like, when did you convert? Why don't you have a Muslim name? My name is Joshua. I've always been asked, why don't you have a Muslim name? I said, I do have a Muslim name. It's Joshua. Don't you know that Muhammad, Aisha, Abu Bakr, Bilal, Hamza, all of these names were given to them by pagan parents? What made those names Muslim? They did when they accepted the faith. And our tradition is, if you have a good name, you keep it. If you have a bad name, like Donkey or War, then you should change it. Huh? Wolf Dog, yeah. But my name is Joshua. Joshua means God saves. May Allah save us all from the hellfire. That's a good name. I keep it. I consider that my Muslim name. So it's really changing the mindset that we have as people to not make blacks and African Americans feel inherently that you are less than as you are. And that you have to change your name and change the way you dress to kind of be accepted. We have our rich history of Islam in our community. Some of the best Hufaz are from Africa. Best people who have memorized the Quran. Some of the Quran reciters in Africa let's see how much time we got, could not be called a Hafiz until they wrote their own Quran. You could memorize it, and then you had to write it. And you would carry it with you. And so when you learn, I think on one of the next slides we have one of the famous people here who rewrote the Quran when they were here. That's because they had done it before, after they had gotten free from slavery. When you talk about who was the first judge, I remember when I was working at CARE, the immigrant community announced, oh, the first judge in America. And it was a new press release, and then the African American Muslim said, excuse me, we got sister, she was in Maryland. What was her name? Judge Mahassan. Y'all didn't know about her? Oh, we didn't know. Well, you're not going to find it unless you're looking for it. And you need to look for it because of this rich history of African American Muslims in America, even before Columbus. Next slide. Dr. Jamila Kareem. This person is very well informed. I encourage you to check out some of her books, not just because she's a Duke graduate, but because she's an amazing intellectual. And she wrote a book about, in the 60s, when the flood of immigration was coming to America from the Muslim world, they had a choice to kind of connect with the African American Muslims. It was a missed opportunity. I wish somebody had the wisdom of Rasulullah to kind of make us the Ansar, the Muhajirin, and kind of pair us up. But they moved into the suburbs, because at that time it wasn't cool, it wasn't good to be associated with black people. It was better to be associated with whiteness. And you see the ramifications of that still today. That we're a very separated community. But we need to know our history and know how we got that way. Next slide. And so that leads to the organization that I'm with, Man and Muslim Alliance in North America. These are some of the people that have been affiliated with us on the screen. And the final slide. The next slide is just beautiful, amazing black leaders in this country, not necessarily with MANA, but I wanted you to see their faces, and I wanted you to see our vision and our mission statement. And the last part of our vision statement is really to keep this legacy alive, this legacy of Islam in America. And if we feel like if we can hold on to that legacy and not erase it, and not make it seem like Islam just got here in 1960, and we say, oh, the first masjid was built in 1927 in Cedar Rapids, Michigan. What? When you had Mansa Abu Bakr coming here in 1312, you think that was the first masjid here in the state? Maybe, but you're not going to find it unless you're looking for it. There's a city called Allah, Arizona. Anybody heard of Allah, Arizona? I think Muslims don't want to live there because they probably consider it shirk living in Allah. But it's a city. There's Mohammed, Illinois. These cities are old cities here in the States. So we have to look for this history. And my last thing is that we hope that we can work with other people, other individuals, whether they're black or not. But our focus is the African American Muslim community. And why is that our focus? Just like before this, the people that were on the stage were talking about the racism, the strong Islamophobia happening in India. You're not going to move the needle on that unless you focus on that issue. This is an issue that we have. It's a worldwide issue, but we're trying to focus on the American impact of that, of what it means to be black, and the issues that we have, the racism that we have still in this country. Most of the time you don't feel it until it's time to get married. But we do have it. And we have to address it so that we can see and continue to see the legacy live on and the African American Muslim community flourish. That's my time. I want to yield it to the sheikhs up here. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.